Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Thanks, Kimberly. Okay, Fast Leader Legion. I'm so excited to actually get the chance to speak and meet with the guest that I have to introduce to you today. Chris Law has been a longtime friend, somebody who I have looked up to, and he is just a wealth of knowledge and one of those people that always finds that shining light in a sea of darkness. Chris Law, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Looking forward to it, Jim.
Awesome. Now, Chris, I've actually given our listeners a brief introduction, but can you actually tell us what is the thing that is your current passion, so that we can actually get to know you better?
Yeah, I have to laugh at that because I am what you would consider a dyed-in-the-wool Aquarius by definition. We are obsessed with making people happy, and I try to live up to that title.
I didn't know that we even shared that. I mean, I'm an Aquarian as well, although I can say that you're probably more of a master at doing what you just said than I am. And you know what? It's true. You actually execute on that, and everybody recognizes it. But even behind that piece of trying to make people happy is somebody who I feel is an excellent leader. Now, when people like us who look for inspiration, who try to help others, who try to really make people feel better about themselves and create that better environment, oftentimes I lean to leadership quotes. Leadership quotes are one of those things that to me kind of trips a trigger a lot and provides some inspiration. Now, do you have a leadership quote that kind of guides you and helps you, and that you think is one of your favorites? Could you please share it with us?
Yeah, no, and thanks for asking that, Jim. I mean, I'm probably going to not do Gandhi complete justice on this. I'm gonna probably grossly paraphrase him, but it had to do with a quote he had about what a good captain does. In typical Gandhi, it's going to be somewhere between, I guess, allegory and a metaphor, but that good captains steer in the current. They don't try to paddle against it. So while there's a lot of good leadership quotes that are out there, for some reason the one with Gandhi it applies to most situations, that I need to step back, I need to take a look at a project, an issue, whatever you're steering into is a lot like a current that you're better versed thinking of how to anticipate and try to project what's going to happen, and don't get in the middle of a whirlpool and find yourself trying to steer against it. And I do use this, not so much that I read the quote out loud, but I always think about it in the back of my head when there's some type of a problem or some type of a project. It doesn't even have to be a problem. It can be a project that you're trying to anticipate what you're going to be up against. I fall back on that one more frequently than I do anything else.
Oh, that's a great quote, and that's also a great mindset. I oftentimes talk to people about just one-on-one interactions with somebody, even if it's in a sales situation or a customer service situation, is to try to find a way to get alongside the person instead of trying to hit them head on. And oftentimes we have just things that we do habitually, like I say, when you say yes, but, when you're responding to somebody, that's exactly what you're doing. You're butting heads. So you have to try to find that path that allows you to swim with the current, swim with them, so that you both have forward momentum. I love that quote. Thanks for sharing that with us. How do you talked about how you kind of apply that. How would you say, that you actually weave that into you? I mean, you talked about the day-to-day. Can you give us really a little bit more of a specific example where you've used that quote and applied that quote?
Yeah, I mean, so many times you draw on failure rather than success. But I'm a big proponent that for the old every lemon you throw out there, hopefully you can find a way to make lemonade out of it. But yeah, on a personal story and inside my career, I do draw on an important failure where I I didn't apply my own credo. I mean, I didn't even know Gandhi's quote back then. Actually, I think, this one story I'm going to tell you probably actually helped prove it. But it was back when I was early in my management career, in a position that was half technical and half customer service. And I guess maybe as Yogi Berra would say, it was probably half something else at the same time. But I was in radiology information system implementation, and it's really when information systems were relatively new. So we're going back into the early 90s on this. And retrospectively, I look at a failure on the outcome of the installation of that project. And it was a failure, not by only my definition, but I think by my bosses and maybe even my staff. That retrospectively, I look on that the communication, the middle ground, the relationship with people, the current that I was in and not realizing it. I didn't find that middle ground between my bosses, my staff, and my customers. And because I wasn't acknowledging, not anticipating what I was in the middle of, it led to the failure to the actual project, and that I retrospectively was not able to focus, delegate, and most importantly, ignore the things that I needed to ignore to be able to better steer.
That's pretty profound when you start talking about things that you should ignore. A lot of times we try to look at every single thing instead of being aware that we need to ignore certain things. That's pretty important note to point out. So, getting over the hump of what, you're talking about, can you give us a little bit of a, specific example on, when that epiphany occurred for you and knowing that you needed to do just that, ignore certain things?
Well, the embarrassing thing about failure is I wish I would have had the epiphany while I was going through the failure. I probably could have prevented it. But it was about 6 months afterwards. Oddly enough, I'm a baseball fan, and so many good things, I think, sometimes come out of baseball for examples that you could use. But I'm a big Reds fan, and I remember being frustrated at a Reds game. They were in a losing streak, and I was watching their hitters get up to the plate, and they were swinging at the first pitch over and over and over again, and not actually having what I thought was, my God, you got to have a strategy when you go up to the plate. You just can't hack at the first pitch. You're out over and over and over again. And then I thought, this is what I was doing. I was jumping in to these situations, these subsets of the project that I was working on. And I wasn't being methodical enough. I wasn't being like, a Gandhi approach on it. I was getting up there and I was jumping on the first thing, trying to answer it, trying to satisfy everybody. And I was going through the churn and burn of it, not realizing that some of this stuff, it just didn't need to be jumped on. It didn't need action. I was hacking at the first pitch over and over again. And that was my epiphany. I was sitting up there in the cheap seats at a Reds game, getting frustrated and realizing that, shoot, I felt like going down there and grabbing these guys going, let me tell you about my radiology experience. Maybe you guys need to take a couple of pitches before you swing. And that was my epiphany.
It's amazing that oftentimes things that are totally unrelated to the hump that we're trying to get over permits us some insight into actually getting over it. I mean, it's just kind of, when you start thinking about whiffing, we all can whiff, right? Whiff and miss.
No, I was going to say it is true that it's the unrelated things a lot of times that cause you to have the epiphany. When you're so caught up in the moment, you're using that stream example, you start drowning in it. And maybe it's when you actually can look over your shoulder, you're out of that moment, and it's something totally unrelated that actually helps you connect some of the basic things that all those things you learn in kindergarten, you learn in third grade, you learn from your parents and everything. You start drawing, or baseball in my case, you start drawing together and say, shoot, if I had just stepped back and gotten myself out of that churn, I think I would have seen it a little bit more clearly. And maybe I would have had that epiphany before that project failed. But that's the wisdom that goes with it. I haven't had a failure like that since, I'm happy to report.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, if you were to give one specific piece of advice to our listeners to help them get over the hump. In regards to that story, what would it be?
I mean, that's a really, oh God, that's a really good question, Jim, because it's hard to boil things down, I think, into one piece of advice that applies to all situations. But I learned a lot of it does have to do with the approach. Or if you see like a rapid coming up ahead or whatever, you need to try to recognize that. You can't keep on with using another metaphor. You can't live your leadership life looking in the rearview mirror. You know, you've got to look ahead. You've got to coordinate all those signals. And the best way to do it is you need to have a balance outside of your work. You need to have that balance. You need to be well rested. You need to understand your own personal signals. And for me, exhaustion is the biggest way to repeat mistakes or to make major mistakes. You need to be fit as a fiddle when you go in every day to lead. Your staff deserves that. Most importantly, your customers deserve that. They need you at your best. And I think a lot of that has to do with being balanced outside of work and being well rested going into work. Sounds really corny, but a lot of my worst decisions were made when I was sleep deprived, or I was like going back, I was not ignoring, I was sweating the small stuff. And it was taking away from the energy I needed to make my big decisions. And I think people have to be really cognizant of that when they're going in to meetings. It's not being prepared by looking at pieces of paperwork. It's being mentally prepared by being rested and having the energy to be able to decipher the signals that you need to be able to decipher. And you can't do that when you're worn out. You just can't do it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And we do hear more and more of that now, where the science is coming out and proving the point that it is true when what you just said. It affects your IQ when you are fatigued. And for us at the Fast Leader Show, we're trying to redefine leadership. It doesn't, at a minimum, we lead ourselves. And so even when we're fatigued, we can't lead ourselves very well. It doesn't matter if you are working in an organization or a nonprofit you're part of, your own business and you're an entrepreneur, or even, a domestic professional. We all have to lead. And we lead self, we lead teams, we lead groups, we lead projects, we lead interactions with vendors. I mean, we all lead, and we have to pay attention to how well we do that, because it's going to affect the result. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about, what you currently do and the passion that you have for that.
Oh, for the past 15 years, I've been in the role where I'm leading the non-clinical aspects of customer service at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, which is recognized as a top 3 hospital, really not only in the United States, I think in the world. It's a very, very important place. And the non-clinical aspects of customer service are so important because they can unfortunately disintegrate from the overall patient experience that we're trying to put on the table here for our patients and families. So the role that I have is to make sure that none of those, what we call the revenue cycle processes, take away, from what we hope ends up being a very satisfying clinical experience. It's something that we've built. It's not just me. We've built it with quite a few people in senior management over the past 15 years, that I think we've taken it from being an unrewarding experience and department to work in, that we weren't actually helping families, to actually being a little bit, using the buzzword proactive. We're a little bit better about that anticipation here as well, too, to try to actually help our families out. So it's a department that we've grown from about 17 people to 48. Actually focusing in on improving that experience. So, happy to report that I think we're doing pretty well. We were J.D. Power certified 7 years in a row for customer service excellence. And, but it is more than this, a trophy and a certification. A lot of our people are very passionate about wanting to help families. So we've changed the mindset over here, that it's not just that reactive model. We've got some people that are very, wanting to help people from the minute they pick up the phone.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, and for the work that you guys are doing. And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. All right, here we go, Fast Leader listeners. It is time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Chris, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your goal is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Chris, are you ready to hoe down?
I'm ready to hoe down. Put me in the hoe down hot seat.
All right, here we go. All right, so what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader?
I still find, using that analogy I gave you before, sometimes I still find myself swinging at that first pitch instead of taking a deep breath and waiting for maybe a few other pitches to come to me.
Oh, perfect. What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Oddly enough, from an economics teacher who I think had a good 360 on me after only teaching me for a few classes. He pulled me aside and said, "You need to not complicate the simple." And I've remembered that one almost as much as that Gandhi quote that I gave you before.
Well, that's a pretty good one. What do you feel is one of your best resources that helps you lead in business or life?
I would say the family balance. Specifically, what I found is I have a grandson, and I look to him, and he gives me inspiration every day. And I take that right into my leadership role. I think of him in the background, and it helps me out.
Awesome. What would be one book you would recommend to our listeners?
God, that is such a tough question because there's so many good books out there. And I think the best book out there is actually being written right now. I'm aware of it being written. I talked with a gentleman by the name of Tom Chi, who was part of the Google, what they call Secret Lab, the guys who developed the car that drives itself, the Google glasses. He's a huge proponent of what they call advanced prototyping. He's in the process of writing a book that's going to have leadership elements in it. I can't wait to read it. It hasn't even been written yet, but I know he's working on it, and I know it's going to be great.
Well, we'll see if we can't try to find a link to that when it becomes available. And I mean, thanks for sharing that. We'll look out for Tom's work. All right, so Fast Leader listeners, you can find links to other information that's associated with the things that Chris shared with us, as well as quotes to tweet on fastleader.net/Chris Law. That's CHRISLAH. Okay, Chris, my last Hump Day Hoedown question for you. Imagine you woke up tomorrow morning and you were 25 years old again. You are supposed to begin a new job as a manager of a team of people that is underperforming and disengaged. But you're lucky. You've retained all of the wisdom and skill that you currently have. Now your task is to turn this team around. So you get up, you get ready, you head out to work. What do you do now?
Deep breath on that one. The knowledge that I have now, taking back to 25 years old again, is for me to get my staff more directly involved with my customers. Focus groups, surveys, feedback, engagement. If I had flaws when I was 25 the first time, I wanted to do things textbook. I wanted to follow my gut. I should have followed my customers. I immediately get their feedback. I get everything that they need, everything that they're feeling, everything in that 360, and I incorporate that into the goals of my team, especially if they're underperforming. I think that would, at the very least, help. It would help get them re-engaged.
Good advice. I think we can all use. Connect with your customer. And you know what? Your customer could be a lot of different people. Who are you serving? Who are you trying to help? So, Chris Law, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Please share with Fast Leader listeners how they can actually connect with you.
I try to make myself as accessible as possible. I will be happy to share. My email address, my work email, is the best way to get a hold of me. So they can get a hold of me, the email at Chris, CHRIS, .law at CCHMC, like Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, .org. I'll be happy to give out my direct office phone. I never turn down a good phone call with a good question. It's 513-636-8904.
Chris, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.